All right, guys, this is the Angry Prepper. Thank you for watching. So today's video, guys, we're going to talk about how our individual freedoms will disappear with the next pandemic. Now, guys, there's a doctor named Meryl Nass. She is breaking down the WHO's pandemic treaty. And in this pandemic treaty that WHO introduced to the world, 130 countries signed up for it. In the video, she breaks down exactly what's going to happen with the pandemic treaty once there's another pandemic. I'd like you guys to take a listen and tell me what you think.
We're undergoing a soft coup, and the idea is to create a whole new set of laws and ignore the existing human rights laws and other laws under the pretext of pandemic preparedness and the biosecurity agenda. The WHO is developing through all its nations, but with the WHO Directorate in the United States in charge, a pandemic treaty and amendments to the existing international health regulations that will remove the human rights protections currently embedded in the IHRs, will enforce surveillance, censorship, get rid of freedom of speech, require governments to censor and only push a single narrative. Also, we will be subject, if they can make this work, to vaccines developed in 100 days, which the organization CEPI is planning to do. And one of the people who founded CEPI was Jeremy Farrar, who is now the chief scientist at the WHO to bring this forward. Other things that the amendments do is to bind the states so they're no longer recommendations but enforceable edicts, provide a liability shield, get rid of intellectual property rights, move supplies from one country to another, enforce digital passports, and the Director General of WHO can demand that a pandemic or a potential pandemic exists. He can just declare it with no standards, and then countries around the world will have to obey. Also, the WHO will tell you what drugs you can and can't use in your nation once a pandemic is declared. Obviously, the budget will increase. One Health is another part of this. One Health is a concept that was created to enable the WHO, with these documents, to take over jurisdiction of everything in the world by saying that climate change, animals, plants, water systems, ecosystems are all central to health. Also embedded in this concept is a peculiar notion that humans are no longer of greater value than animals.
As you heard, you can see that they want individual freedoms and state and country freedoms to disappear. They want total and utter control during the next pandemic. Now, we did see a lot of restrictions and regulations come down when Mr. 19 popped up all over the world. You saw different countries handle it differently, and it almost, if not all countries, most countries, if not all, treated it like a totalitarian kind of event where you lost all your freedoms and whatever the country or state said to do is what you were going to do. We saw what happened in Australia. We saw what happened in big cities like New York and Detroit, where mayors became authoritarians and told you what you were going to do, how you were going to do it, and when you were going to do it. We all watched what went on in China. That was an atrocity. No one actually stood up for themselves there. Australia, they tried, but they got browbeat into submission. And other countries like New Zealand did somewhat the same thing, and so did the UK. Now, upon a lot of false information coming out when Mr. 19 was flourishing, if you will, citizens browbeat people like us, or tried to browbeat people like us into submission by yelling and screaming at us for not putting things in our faces, by yelling and screaming at us for not taking the arm ticket. So we watched them hand over that power, if you will, to people and watch people try to check us. But people like myself and you guys that watch this we didn't fucking budge, blink, or cry in the face of other people yelling at us. So, with that, guys, the next pandemic, I honestly believe we're going to lose our individual freedoms because keep in mind who can initiate or tell what state or what country what a pandemic is, and that if a pandemic is authorized, if you will, that now that country is under complete and utter control over who, or who has control over that country, complete control over it. So whatever who says goes. Now the IHR, you heard her mention that early in the video, that's the International Health Regulations. Those are regulations, again, guys, that who's going to implement during their BS. Now, earlier, I think I said 130 countries were signed up. As 196 countries. I apologize for that. And 196 countries have to follow this IHR, again, the International Health Regulations, which puts all 196 countries on the same page. So there's no longer, this country's doing that country's doing this country's letting their people live, and this country's tormenting their people. Now we're all going to be blanketly tormented together around the world. Now, of course, guys, what is mentioned in the WHO's pandemic treaty is the narrative. They want control of the narrative. Now, we did see them controlling the narrative during Mr. 19 all over the world. We watched social media social media companies like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even YouTube, especially YouTube, rather, take control of the narrative. And when we were trying to push things that were true, they were turning around and getting rid of channels, demonetizing channels, deleting videos, deleting posts. We watched that. So in my suspicions, Mr. 19 was a trial run to see what they can do and what they can get away with. So, of course, in the pandemic treaty, they mentioned controlling the narrative through way of social media and airway TVs and radio. They want that to be controlled so that we can't sit there and tell people, oh, you know what, maybe you should try this method to feel better. Something as simple as taking it easy, drinking chamomile tea, drinking, turmeric tea or turmeric milk, whatever it's called. I think it's called gold milk or something like that. Drinking that and making yourself feel better. Oh, you have inflammation in the body? Take this. They don't want us doing that anymore. They don't want us mentioning that. So they want to control the narrative as much as possible. Plus, they want more people to take more arm tickets. That's how you control the narrative. You get the dummies to believe your bullshit, line up and take the arm tickets. That's why they want the narrative controlled. They want the media controlled, as we saw during Mr. 19. The media was controlled. The media had a set script that they all read from, because I know a lot of you saw those collages or montage of different news networks from around the world saying the same exact shit, because they were given the same fucking thing to read and they were controlling the narrative. And plus, with that little ticker tape at the bottom telling us how many people passed away, how far it had spread. Then they threw up maps and showed you how far in the country it was or how far around the world it got. And they kept people in fear with that. They want to do that again on a grand scale. Now, they want a vaccine company called CEPI to make arm tickets within 100 days, if not faster, within 100 days. Now, keep in mind, we watched something come out that wasn't accurate, didn't work accurately or at all, with less than 8 to 9 months of actual research being done on it. Now we're watching all of these problems happen, but now they're talking about in the pandemic treaty, whatever thing breaks out, they want this company to have a arm ticket ready within 100 days. Now, CEPI is being put in charge, which again it's a arm ticket company to make arm tickets in 100 days. They're being put in charge of this operation. So for those of you asking what CEPI is a Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. They're a company based out of Norway, right? They're a Norwegian association based out of Norway. And they are right now in charge, guys, of any arm ticket that's going to be developed in 100 days. Obviously, if another country wants to help, they can, but they have to send all information to CEPI. So that's even more dangerous, to put one company in charge of something that they're not going to look too deep into and release it out to the public in 100 days. Keep in mind, right now, they are developing an arm ticket for disease X, a disease that doesn't exist, that's not out there yet, but somehow they have a arm ticket ready to rock and roll should disease X pop up. Now, here's a more serious thing. States, countries no longer could recommend anything during a pandemic. So during a outbreak, if you will, countries have to follow what WHO tells them to do and tells them to say. So they have to follow, again, this preset, whatever it is, not script, but plan for whatever outbreak happens. And every country has to follow the same plan so that there's no deviations, there's no differences. If a country's like, you know what, I think we should try this medication, they don't want to hear that. You follow whatever WHO tells you to do, whatever medications they tell you to take, whatever steps they tell you to take. The country rather, has to do it. And in turn, the people have to do it. Now, here in the United States, there's going to be major pushback. In England, there's probably going to be some pushback as well. And probably in other countries, as we saw them pushing back over nonsense. If this thing gets initiated, guys, I can see a pushback. The one problem I see is that whatever thing happens next, whatever outbreak happens next, if that is super bad and people are legitimately not making it or passing away, I could see people folding like origami and stepping in line and following this pre-planned plan for us to follow. Because I can't, right now, looking at the WHO pandemic treaty, I'm like, this is bullshit. There's no way I'm doing half of that. Now, I know what I'm not doing, and I know what I'm doing. What I'm not doing is following any government agency that's going to ultimately take power away from this country or any other country to tell us what we can and can't do. That I know I'm not following. Now, how bad is it going to get for a lot of us? Well, this is why the whole CBDC steps into play. CBDC, guys, steps in, and there goes your money. Because if you don't follow any of these plans, if you don't listen to whatever the WHO or whatever state you live in or whatever country you're in, you don't listen to that plan, you don't follow that plan, your CBDC account could be frozen. For those that don't know, CBDC stands for Central Banking Digital Currency, right? This is a system, guys, where it's digital currency. It's not a physical dollar, gold, or silver. It's a digital currency that countries control and hand out to the people. So now they want to implement this first, get more people on it, a lot of people on it, and then, of course, some crazy outbreak happens, and now they can control you because if you can't feed your family, if you can't pay your rent, if you can't get paid by your job, because your job will pay you, it'll go into an account, but then you won't have access to that account. Even worse, if they decide to fine you, they'll drain your account because you're not listening to the rules and regulations that were established by WHO. So along with all of this, guys, they're getting rid of intellectual property. So if there is a outbreak, intellectual properties go out the window, meaning Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, they can come up, they can have something that's going to save this planet. So, or supposedly make people better. Sorry. And if they do have that, the WHO can turn around and go, that's ours. We own that now. Without any red tape around it, without any kind of lawsuits, without anything being done, the companies can't stop it. And WHO can take it and dole it out as they wish. So they're also getting rid of red tape when it comes to delivering stuff, right? So instead of having customs search everything up, if there are things that need to be sent to another country that's going to help that country out during that outbreak, no more customs, no more red tape. It just gets shipped. Now, there's a conspiracy theory side of me that automatically looked at that red tape or customs being cut out of that mix with they're probably going to start shipping people around. Human trafficking in full fucking fledged because now you got no one checking these containers. Though a lot of the custom agents around the world probably look the other way to kids that are being shipped all over the world. Don't want to get into that, but the red tape being no longer there so that they can ship equipment around, I think there's another alternative motive behind that. Now, guys, digital passports. Digital passports, obviously, we've been following it for the last, 2 years or so. And WHO wants more rules, regulations, and the digital passport to be forced upon people. So you have to have a digital passport. Again, you're probably going to need a digital passport with your CBDC account and the fact that if you don't listen to WHO, your digital passport can restrict you from doing certain things like going food shopping, going to the movies, going to the mall, because you're going to have to get that scan. They're trying to make this one world order, guys, come together, but it's coming together slowly, and people are missing all the pieces that are actually still floating about, that once they connect, guys, locks us in to this one world order. Forget about the whole BRICS bullshit. I think that's just a ruse. That's just to get us to go, oh, they're going to be brought into the fold very soon. A lot of people seem to think that they're going to become the superpower. I don't think so. I think that there's a more nefarious thing going on, and maybe even the BRIC pack is not wary of it, or maybe they see it and that's why they broke away to do their own thing. Regardless, guys, digital passports are going to be forced upon many people. Clearly not us, but many people. Now, guys, remember I said earlier, if who has control over what's going on, right? Once they can declare a pandemic or declare a possible pandemic, they take total control over that country or state. The problem is, or the bigger question is, when are they going to relinquish control over that country or state once the pandemic is done? Are they even going to look at it and go, all right, it's over, let's get back to work? Probably not, guys, because that's the ultimate power you have once you grab power from people by declaring something or the possibility of something. Remember, even if who thinks there's a possibility of an outbreak, they can absolutely assume control over that country or state. Now, guys, interestingly enough, according to the WHO treaty, pandemic treaty, and you guys heard her say it, humans are lesser of animals, water, food, things of that nature, meaning we are the last priority when it comes to the pandemic, which is weird. Take control over people, tell them what they need to take, but make us less important than animals, food, and water. Why are they doing that? Well, the World Economic Forum mentions it 1,000,001 times, how they want to depopulate the planet. Well, how come part of that plan is in the WHO's pandemic treaty? Again, regarding humans as lesser than animals, food, water, and supplies, right? And I mean natural resources, sorry. So if they already labeling us at that level, this is bad. Because again, this folds or rolls right into the WEF's plans of depopulating the planet. So the White House started an Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy. It's an office. It's now within the Biden administration. These people work closely with WHO during the next, whatever the outbreak is. So if whatever outbreak happens next, these people run closely with them. Now this office, if you will, was started right after this treaty was introduced to the United States. So once it was introduced to the United States, once the United States took a look at it, they did send it back because they wanted a couple things changed. But once that treaty was introduced to the United States, guys, they came out with this office that's going to work closely with WHO during the next outbreak. You can look up the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy yourself, and then look up the WHO treaty. They both are in line with one another if something goes on, if the next thing goes on. Now, we already know, guys, another one is coming. It's just a matter of when. Now, as far as preppers goes, again, guys, this isn't the bitch nigga society. This is the real nigga network, right? We're not going to sit there and fold and fucking get scared and worry about this shit. It's just good to know that this could happen, and that if it does, we need to know what's going to happen next and what we need to do next to not take part of this bullshit. All right, guys. Anyway, I know this is a long video. I apologize for that. I will see you in the next video.